The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests, have not been evaluated by the FDA, and are in no way attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of the show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed, qualified healthcare practitioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom, and this is a Supplement Super Sleuth.
That'll be me, and the herbal storyteller.
And that definitely would be me. And together, we're going to take a peek behind the curtain of the natural products industry.
We'll be sharing naturals in the news, dispelling lots of myths, interviewing key players in the industry, and highlighting our favorite herbs and supplements.
So with that, let's pull back that curtain and see what's there.
God, it's hot.
All right, Nan, are you melting down out there on the East Coast?
It's so hot. Oh my God. It's so hot.
It's been warm here, but nothing like yours.
I know people don't use these anymore, but I think it's just it's a fan.
90 plus degree weather with super high humidity, right?
Oh, and the humidity. Oh, it's oppressive.
Oh my,
it's oppressive. Oh my God, but we're going to do naturals in the news.
Today on vitamin D. And what?
Vitamin D. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of our ACED lecture, ACED. So we did vitamin A in episode
16.
What the heck, 16? No. Yeah, 16. And we're on episode 17 right now. So if you missed vitamin A, go back to episode 16, check it out. We did, it was fun. It was
the thing is,
pretty comprehensive.
These are absolutely essential
Very important.
Vitamins, A, C, E, and D. And the more people know about them, the more they understand why they're essential and why it's important to look at your intake. Because, when you look at studies, those are the vitamins that people are most deficient in.
It's amazing because they're fat soluble, and you would think, oh, that's not an issue. But they're really not as easy to get from food sources, and we've moved away from a lot of those food sources. We're moving away from animal protein. We definitely moved away from organ meats, and vitamin D, like we'll find out later, that's very hard to get in a diet. So we're going to go over all that. But
we've got some, we've got some interesting
a lot of deficiency.
Studies. These are all really, really current. I love it when we can find naturals, naturals in the news that is, has been published in a peer-reviewed journal within the last, few months. So the first one we want to talk about in naturals in the news here is what's called a curcumin piperine. And so curcumin is turmeric. It's one of what they think is the primary ingredient in turmeric, but as an herbalist, Nancy and I both know that the primary ingredient in turmeric is turmeric, because that encompasses the entire group of compounds that make it so balanced. The rest of it is just curcumin light, or turmeric light, which is okay. We've got curcumin, but it's a combination of curcumin and piperine. And piperine is again one of the wonderful compounds in black pepper that make it so fabulous. But what they found is there's curcumin piperine co-supplementations could significantly reduce weakness in COVID-19 patients. So this was a clinical controlled trial involving 46 subjects between 18 and 65. So that pretty much covers the range of a lot of people in this country. And basically what it was associated with co-supplementation with curcumin and piperine mixture had a reduction in the symptoms of weakness and tiredness in COVID-19 outpatients. So,
and that's a big infection kind of lingering symptom for people after, and even if some people will have mild symptoms, they won't even get a cough, but they'll take a test and they'll say it's positive for COVID, and the fatigue will linger sometimes for a month. So it's really nice to know that
things that they can do that enhance
with
their ability, because that's one of the biggest complaints that I hear with people who either had it or have been exposed to it. Because a lot of people have been exposed to it, but they haven't had the major symptoms. Their body has been able to sort of fight it off. up to this point anyway. Excuse me.
Right.
And their body's been able to fight it
Right.
off up to this point anyway, and they are tired all the time. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, and that's what this study is looking at, is that idea of weakness
Yeah.
and tiredness on people who have already had the COVID and they're trying to get their life back together.
Yes.
Now, and being a mushroom guy,
Yeah.
I
So
love
that's
this next one.
promising. Right.
I am, I just really love mushrooms. I got a hat that's made out of mushrooms here. So, and this is from Forbes. So this is not just a,
Yeah.
random, like, insignificant publication. Forbes is a really big study, big magazine, and it says that microdosing psilocybin mushrooms improves mood and mental health after 1 month, new study finds. So this was from July 5th of 2022. And data from a study involving 1,133 subjects and published in a very prestigious magazine, Nature Scientific Reports. The data has linked microdosing psilocybin mushrooms between 1/100th and 3/100ths of a gram, or excuse me, 1/10 and 3/10ths of a gram, have improvements in depression, anxiety, and stress after only 1 month. So,
I do want to say that, so they say 1/10 to 3/10 of a gram, but we don't know the weight of the person. So that's saying, don't try this at home, folks.
right.
You really should have,
Well,
you really should have a qualified practitioner,
help you,
and
yeah.
it may not be legal in your state either. So,
Yeah, keep in mind that
so
it is
there's
a
a lot.
controlled substance.
It
And,
is a controlled substance.
and really, your practitioner should not be a dealer. So,
Typical, right? Oh my God, Tom.
but remember that, the other saying that I think is pertinent here is the devil's in the details. It really
Yes.
is a question of, and it's very pertinent that Nancy points that out, because as a practitioner, I know that she sees this all the time. A serving size or a dosage that would work for one person won't work for another person, just because of body weight or metabolism, or your body morphology. So basically,
Or other things that they're taking.
yes,
So,
exactly. But I think it's a wonderful step forward, because there are so much research now coming out on psilocybin mushrooms and their effect on PTSD, their effect on mood
yeah.
and depression.
Yeah.
So I'm liking the fact that Forbes is now even publishing information like this.
It's wonderful that there's studies going on. I think that's really promising. So,
And I think you've got something
okay, next.
fascinating too.
Yeah, next headline. 2 cancer patients battle to make psilocybin accessible for palliative care. This was in Scientific American, July 8th, 2022. 2 patients are caught in a legal battle with the Drug Enforcement Agency concerning the right to try, act, and gaining access to psilocybin as a means to assuage their feelings about their terminal diagnosis. This is tricky business, and God, my heart goes out to these people, because they don't want morphine. They don't want something that is going to not just dull their senses as they start to make their transit, to wherever they're going to go, leaving their bodies, right? They want to be more present, and they don't want their breathing to be. It's pretty intense to watch someone on morphine die. They gasp in the end. Their mouths wide open. They battle with breathing, and then finally they stop breathing. So and of course, with this kind of palliative care, the morphine is to take away the pain, because they're probably in enormous amounts of pain, but it's not a pretty death. Death is not always pretty anyway. Death can be pretty harsh and pretty hard to take for some people, but I think what these people are saying is we really want to be conscious, and we want to be in a better mental state, and so they're fighting for their rights. So I think it's brings up an incredible discussion. You can see both sides of the conversation on this, for sure, and you can sort of support both sides of the conversation of well, it's a controlled substance and we don't know how to control it. And yet these people are saying, but I want the right to try to have a death of my own choosing. So it does get
Well,
to be a pretty
especially in light
interesting
of the movie,
conversation. So,
Fantastic Fungi, where they were actually, that was some of the things that they were talking about in that movie. And
yes.
if our viewers haven't ever seen that, you can go out to Netflix.
Oh, it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's called
Yeah, it's
Fantastic Fungi
mind-blowing.
by Louis
Fantastic.
Forsberg, and
Yeah,
just amazing. And so
amazing.
what's interesting, living on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California are all what they call right to die states, where you have a
Right to die.
Yeah, you have a right to die the way you would like to die, rather than having to suffer and be completely hooked up to tubes and in a hospital, at the end stage, and no quality of life. So part of that right to die is the right to access things like psilocybin that can help you get your mind, help you see a larger picture, and get your mind in a better state around what's about to happen.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I absolutely salute these people and hope that they're extremely successful, because
I do too.
it's a wonderful thing to be able to say there is something, because if you watch the movie, you'll see how the people who actually use psilocybin to deal with their impending death suddenly became totally relaxed and looked at it and realized it's all part of the continuum. It's all right. I'm not disappearing.
I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful statement.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing to see it from that perspective. Oh, next headline is resveratrol cuts hospitalization rate for COVID outpatients. This was published in Nutra Ingredients USA, July 1st, 2022. Data from a new double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in Scientific Reports have linked supplementation with resveratrol in combination with vitamin D3 with a lower rate of hospitalizations in patients 45 years and older who have tested positive for COVID-19. So we're going to be talking about vitamin D3, and it's pretty lovely to see these hitting big publications now, and really giving us solid information about some things that we can do for ourselves at home and nutritionally in order to support ourselves for respiratory issues.
And then the final headline,
I love that.
is
It's a great headline.
an article about night vision and carotenoids, and this is from Nutrients magazine, which is it's a journal for practitioners, generally speaking, and scientists. So it's a well-respected, peer-reviewed type journal, and this comes from September of 2021. And the title of it is a randomized placebo-controlled clinical trial on the effects of carotenoid supplementation on night vision in older adults. So, if you'll remember, Nancy and I talked about vitamin A, which is that's the source of carotenoids. Beta carotenoid, beta carotene, the carotenoids. And what they're finding is that as we age, and I resemble that remark at this point in my life, as we age, it's very common for seniors to have very different night vision, especially when they're driving. And so there's been a very, very large increase in traffic accidents and fatalities at night involving seniors who are driving at night who have reduced night vision. And it's known that carotenoid-rich diets are known to increase the ability of the eyes to see things at night. So what they did is they had a randomized placebo-controlled study. Literally, they screened out patients who would have had other things that would have caused them to not respond as appropriately. But what they did is they looked at a combination of 14 milligrams of zeaxanthine and 7 milligrams of lutein and some other non-carotenoid vitamins and minerals. And they found that it actually had a very big difference in the patients who were taking it, as opposed to those who were getting the placebo. That's what a double-blind placebo-controlled study is. So one person gets the ingredient that they're looking at, and the other people get the ingredient that they're looking at. And they found that 21 milligrams of dietary carotenoids made a big impact, and that take especially the zeaxanthine, the lutein. Some of those are especially important if you're a senior. So if you're 50 years of age and older, guess what? Sorry, I know 50 is the new 20, but
Not really.
not really. It's like
Try telling your body that.
it may be the new 20 the way you dress, but sometimes the way your body ages is not exactly the new 20. So if you're 50, 55 and older, you have to start thinking about, where are my eyes going, especially if I'm driving at night and everything else. So this was a very promising study, and it's nice to read that it's appearing. This was actually part of the American, Herbal Products Association. This is the basically edited by Mark Blumenthal, who Nancy and I have known for a couple of decades at least, and who's just an absolutely extraordinary man, head of the American Botanical Council. So wonderful to see this. Carotenoid supplementation may improve night vision in older adults. If you're qualified, raise your hand. If you can see me, we're doing okay. All right, Nan, let's go on with
Okay.
our main deal.
So it's time for Naturals in the Know. Oh, okay. All righty, dighty. So Naturals in the Know
Ready.
this week will be, yeah, I do too. I absolutely.
I look forward just to the music. It's so much fun.
Sometimes I do too. I'm thinking, I'm there's a lot that goes into
What am I
putting
missing
this
lately? Oh, I know. It's our intro.
podcast together, but the music is so much fun, and I look forward to it. So yeah, so
Oh,
I'm gonna share this here today, and yeah, so we're gonna be talking about the vitamin D. This is the rest of our ACED. Our ACED lecture that we've done way in the past. So we're going to focus on vitamin D. And if you missed the vitamin A, please go back to episode number 16 and take a look at it. And that might give you a little support for this. We do talk about the FDA sort of moving away from IUs or international units into microgram. But some of us still talk about IUs, and vitamin D still is referenced in potency as IU. Eventually, we will completely convert over to milligrams. So I do want to say that as kind of a preface to today's lecture. So vitamin D refers to a group of...
Yeah, if you're looking
You're
at a
right.
supplement bottle and it says IU, or if
Yeah.
it says microgram, don't worry, it's been converted.
Exactly. Vitamin D refers to a group of fat-soluble secosteroids. So really, it's a vitamin, hormone vitamin. It is really more like a hormone, the way that it looks and the way that it acts in the body. It's responsible for enhancing intestinal absorption of calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphate, and zinc. So think about that. If you are taking minerals and you're not getting what you need, think about vitamin D and vitamin D3. And the most important compounds in this group are vitamin D3, which is known as cholecalciferol. Vitamin D2 is ergocalciferol. And they're both important. They're both a part of the complex of vitamin D. It's responsible in part for normal immune response, normal inflammatory responses, bone growth especially, and muscle function. Low blood calciferol, vitamin D, can result from avoiding the sun. Being deficient in vitamin D can cause intestinal absorption of dietary calcium to fall to 15%. So what that means is you could be getting plenty of dietary calcium. You can also be taking calcium supplementation. And if you don't have, if you're not replete in vitamin D3, you won't utilize your calcium appropriately. So when an individual has appropriate vitamin D, they absorb between 60 and 80% of dietary calcium. So keep that in mind, those of you who are trying to figure out how to really work with the minerals in your body. Again, nothing's in a vacuum, and we have a tendency to be a little bit reductionistic when it comes to even our supplements or even nutrition in the context of food. But these compounds work together. So you have a pro-hormone called vitamin D, and you have minerals, and these minerals don't really work really well, and you don't absorb them and utilize them without vitamin D. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, you might even think of it as a catalyst that enhances the ability of your body to utilize these other nutrients. And the
Right.
very interesting thing about it is that we don't tend to think about vitamin D. But it's something that the entire world, there's a vitamin D deficiency all around the planet. It's not just in the United States. It's not just somewhere. It's all over the planet.
All right, so you can see here on this slide, these are the top sources of vitamin D. Very few foods contain vitamin D, which we will talk about. I think it's important to keep that in mind and remember vitamin D is added to milk, it's added to cereals, it's added to a lot of foodstuffs in the United States and Europe for that reason. But remember, dermal synthesis of vitamin D from cholesterol, that's the good cholesterol in your body, is dependent on sun exposure, specifically UVB radiation. So for most healthy people, 15 minutes of sunshine a day on arms, legs, and shoulders without sunscreen may convert to a moderate dose of vitamin D. However, synthesis to active forms is wildly variable from person to person. So other factors, yeah. You're not. It's recording the PowerPoint. It's recording the PowerPoint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I was. Oh, I know where I was. Okay. So synthesis to the active form of vitamin D, the form that you use in your body, is wildly variable from person to person. So other factors that attenuate, so kind of shrink your availability of vitamin D from the sun, is the latitude you
More
live at. The
susceptible
higher
to
latitude
burning.
you are, the difference of angle of the sun on your skin. So that's a big issue. Like if you're at high latitudes, I'm at a high latitude, but there are higher, you'll have to spend more time on the sun, right? And you'll receive less benefit. The time of year, so summer you get more, winter you get less, right? The health of your skin. That's really important to think of, the age of the person, and also the amount of melanin that you have in your skin. So if you're lighter skin, you're going to get more sun, but you're also going to be, more susceptible to burning and melanoma. But again, so it's variable. I guess that's what I'm saying, is you have to keep that in mind. Vitamin D from the diet or dermal synthesis from sunlight is biologically inactive. So you have to remember that. Just because you put it in doesn't mean that your body's activating it. Activation requires enzymatic conversion in the liver and the kidneys. They work together. So think about that. If you have issues with your liver, if you have gallbladder disease, or your gallbladder's gone and your liver has been kind of an issue for you over your life, or if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or if you have alcoholic liver disease, you're going to have issues with that. If you have issues with your kidneys, you're going to have lower amounts of vitamin D available. And there's only a few foods, such as the flesh of fatty fish, wild salmon, is the most notable, if you will, that naturally contain these moderate amounts of vitamin D. And in the US, like I said before, and Europe, cow's milk and plant-derived milk substitutes are fortified with vitamin D, as many as breakfast cereals also are. Just as a quick mention, vitamin D toxicity is very rare. There are published cases of toxicity that are in excess of 40,000 IUs taken on an extended period of time. And most people wouldn't even take that much anyway. If they couldn't, they'd have to take a whole bottle of vitamin D to get that. Um, yeah. Yeah. And mushrooms are a good dietary source of vitamin D too. They contain high concentrations of ergosterol, which is provitamin D2. And if you combine sunlight, that will trigger the conversion to viosterol, which is pre-vitamin D2, which then turns into vitamin D2. So, fresh mushrooms or dried powders of mushrooms, if you expose them to sunlight or artificial sunlight with using an ultraviolet lamp, you can increase the vitamin D2 level. So that's kind of cool. You can see here there are food sources: cod liver oil, wild salmon. I don't know how many people sit down and eat free range lard. Pickled herring, anchovies, the small fish, they have sardines. They do have some moderate amounts of dietary sources of vitamin D. So in general, vitamin D functions to activate the innate immune responses and dampen the adaptive immune responses. And those adaptive immune responses are the ones that can get out of control and kind of attack your own tissue, like in the case of cytokine storms, and that, when, your own body's attacking your lungs or attacking your GI tract, right? So deficiency has been linked to an increased risk of severity of viral infections, including HIV, COVID-19, and other respiratory viruses. Low levels of vitamin D appear to be a risk factor for tuberculosis, and historically vitamin D was used as a treatment for tuberculosis. So there's a huge connection to vitamin D, the amount that you have in your body, and respiratory health. And that's basically what we're getting at. And I know Tom chose this really beautiful piece of study here, and I'm sure you want to remark
Well,
on
one of
that.
the one of the things that they're talking about is the fact that vitamin D enhances the production of certain immune cells within the body, specifically what are called T regulator cells. And T regulator cells are important for keeping the body from producing too many inflammatory compounds. They're called cytokines. And all of those cytokines have different names. They're generally called interleukin. And so without trying to get deeply into it, because that would be like a whole biology lesson, there are yeah, exactly. There are
Right.
interleukins that are inflammatory in nature, and then there are interleukins that are anti-inflammatory in nature, and the body uses them to balance. So whenever we are having an immune response, you get COVID, you get a flu, you get a cold, you cut your finger, your immune system goes into action. And it creates, if you've cut your finger, the immune system right around where you cut your finger starts sending out messages. I need more immune cells to take care of potential infection, to start healing, to clean up the area, and so on. And some of those cells are called T cells, T regulator cells, memory cells.
Yes.
So as Nan was mentioning earlier on, the acute phase of an immune response can be controlled by vitamin D. It's literally helping us not to produce too many. And what we've heard about, when you think about the flu pandemic of 1918, and then the COVID pandemic
Yes.
of 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2029, who knows how long this pandemic is going to go on. We're talking about inflammatory processes in the body, and this is what makes it so crucial.
Yes.
It's why they talk about the benefits of supplementing with vitamin D, especially for seniors. Now, again, I know that I'm speaking for a whole category that I happen to be a standing member of, but seniors have, literally, seniors have, by and large, in the United States, the senior population in the United States, about 61% of us are deficient in vitamin D3. And we definitely, that's a
Wow.
lot.
Yeah.
Now, the rest of
That's
the
a lot.
population is still at a 35 to 40% deficiency. So you're not far behind us.
Right.
literally. And you maybe, as you get older, you're catching
Right.
up. So believe me. Um,
Definitely. Vitamin D supplementation in low doses, like 400 to 1,000 IUs a day, may slightly decrease that overall risk of acute respiratory tract infection. And the benefits were found not just in the seniors, Tom, they were found
yep.
in children and adolescents ages 1 to 16 years
Exactly.
of
So it's not
age.
taking
Um,
giant
so,
doses of
yeah,
vitamin D all at once. Like, oh, I'm deficient, so I'm going to take,
right.
20,000 IU's or micrograms, however you want to convert that.
Yeah, it's not more
Mhm.
is better. Exactly. Which is so typical of our, oh, well, if a little bit is good, then a lot is good. That's
No.
not true. you know, it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? You have
Hmm.
too little, too much, or
That's
just
right.
right.
Yeah.
And we got to get the just right, right?
And literally, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
again,
So,
it's the devil's
um,
in the details. If you happen to be overweight, you're not going to be absorbing your vitamin D as efficiently because the liver becomes
right.
impacted by the fact that you, especially if you're obese. Also, your diet has a lot to do with it. You can have, like I mentioned earlier, if you're on specific drugs, you may not be absorbing your vitamin D. So that's the devil
Yes,
in the details. You need to understand what your potential is for
definitely.
absorbing vitamin D, and that's where you work with your practitioner. You can work with a practitioner who will be able to measure your vitamin D levels and tell you. And it's important. It's important to do these things because,
I think it's really important. Yeah. And in addition to respiratory, issues, and we were talking about vitamin A, we were talking about its application in epithelial tissue. Vitamin D also plays a role in these kinds of tissues. Low levels of vitamin D are associated with two major forms of human
yeah,
inflammatory bowel disease. Meta-analysis of vitamin D therapy in IBD patients with vitamin D deficiency has shown that supplementation is effective at correcting vitamin D levels and is associated with an improvement in scores for clinical disease activity and biochemical markers for Crohn's disease and colitis and inflammatory bowel disease. So, again, it's not a cure, but there can be a substantial supportive nutritional effect of vitamin D, uh, you know, creating more robust amounts of vitamin D in your body and your small and large colon health. And that's a really key piece. Another piece of health issue that's related to vitamin D is diabetes. There was a meta-analysis of 8 studies that found that vitamin D supplementation significantly reduced the risk for type 2 diabetes mellitus for non-obese pre-diabetic patients. So there were 37 articles that found that vitamin D supplementation significantly improved glycemic control, A1C, and fasting glucose in individuals that had type 2 diabetes mellitus that wasn't related to obesity. So there's it's really interesting because you can really see the importance of vitamin D in
hmm,
nutrition. And yes, it's fat soluble. So a lot of people will say, a lot of doctors say, well, you don't need a lot, toxicity, could happen. But if you're taking anywhere from 400 IU to 1,000 IUs a day, you're not going to reach
not even
toxicity
close.
status, not in the long
Yeah.
run, and it could really be helpful. I know you have even more up to date information on vitamin D,
Well,
Tom, that you wanted to
one of the
share.
things
So I wanted
exactly
to
one
give
of the
you
things
an
that's increasing in prevalence in the United States, especially, is what they call non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it's so you're
oh
not a
yeah,
drinker, you're not, but it's your diet that is changing the way your liver is able to
yeah,
process the fats in our foods. And we have so many trans fats that we're exposed to. We
yeah,
have so much excessive saturated fat. Not that saturated fat is bad in and of itself, but even water can be taken to extremes, and you take too much water, you could drown. So, literally, vitamin D has been
it's
shown
true.
in recent studies to be extremely important for helping to keep you from developing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is one of the fastest growing health concerns in the U.S. today, is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease,
Yeah,
and part of that is completely coupled with the deficiency of vitamin D in the general population, along with their diet.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, really, really interesting. It's amazing to me to see just these nutritionals, and there are a lot of herbs that
Hmm.
are rich in carotenoids. But again, then you have to figure, am I healthy enough to convert the carotenoids into
Right.
active forms of vitamin A? And can you convert some of these food sources of vitamin D into active forms of vitamin D? So again, it's not a straight line, and it's not
No.
reductionistic. It's really a very dynamic play of the body and all of its biochemical abilities. And if your organs are healthy and your diet has been healthy, and not just one day, like, okay, I'm going to take vitamin D3
Or
for a
I'm going to buy a
week and I'll
bottle
be
of
fine.
vitamin
And it's not
D3 and
really
I'll
like
take it,
that.
and
It's
then once I run out, I'm done. I don't need it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm good. It's what you do every day. It's like brushing your teeth, right? You go to your dentist and they say, well, you're brushing your teeth. Yes. Are you flossing your
Mhm.
teeth?
Yeah. Ooh, I don't know,
Right. But the
maybe.
things that you do every day have that
Yeah.
cumulative effect, and vitamin D and vitamin A, even though, again, fat soluble and well stored, you can run those storage pieces out pretty quickly, especially if you're burning the candle at both ends, or if you have a high level stress job, and you also have and you are an athlete, or if you're a woman and you've had more than one child, you can run those stores
And,
down
and
pretty
again, if
darn quickly.
if you are overweight, because vitamin D is fat soluble, because it's a fatty vitamin, it can be stored in adipose tissue in the body and not be available to the other functions that you need it for in the body.
Yeah,
And as Nan mentioned earlier, it has a
that's a
big
really good
effect
point.
on epithelial cells. And the epithelial cells not only line, I mean, the studies are showing that it's wonderful for intestinal issues, but those same epithelial cells line the
Yes.
respiratory tract. And that's where it's especially important for
Yes.
vitamin D in relationship to COVID, which has that entire respiratory action connected to it. So again, just one of those things.
It's
Let those
true.
who have ears hear that vitamin D it's important.
I
It's
love
important.
those.
And
It's
yeah, and
important. Yeah,
one
it's
last
important.
soapbox thing before we're finally done. All of this that we're
Okay.
talking about is supplementation. And supplementation, whether with nutraceuticals, like Nan loves to talk about, or herbs, like we both love to talk about, that's a privilege. That's a right that we have. And we have a right to take our health in our
Yep.
own hands as much as possible. We have a right to buy supplements in our stores. And there are many states, my state, California, is a state that has pending legislation that could limit or even completely eliminate access to supplementation and say, okay, you're only now
Wow.
going to be able to get anything for your health from a doctor, and you cannot take any of your own health into your own hands. So, if you like the idea of taking supplements, if you like the idea of herbals and combinations of herbs and supplements, um, contact your congressman. Be at least a little bit active. This is not the first time that this type of legislation has been foisted on the American public to try and take away a right so that the pharmaceutical companies can make more money. My God, I'm sorry, but they make more money than God now anyway. So it's not that supplementation is a huge industry, but they look at it as a competition. So be active. The price of freedom, like Thomas Jefferson said, is eternal vigilance. So be vigilant. Yeah.
Eternal vigilance. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we will be doing this podcast twice a month, sharing our perspectives of natural health and healing, and or interviewing key people and thought leaders in the natural products industry. We love hearing their knowledgeable perspectives. And if you don't mind, please subscribe to and like our Facebook page, our Instagram, our YouTube, our TikTok. Share with your friends and family that you think might really enjoy this information. So
Share,
please,
share, share, and
um,
follow.
please spread the word. Yeah, follow. And we love to hear your comments. Please give us your comments by writing something in the social media sites. Takes us a little bit of time because we have so many of these now, and it's not my world, so I have to remember to go to them. So I go to them once a week, but I will get to you, and we really, really want to hear your thoughts, and we want to know what you want to hear about for sure. Keep us working out here to give you information that is useful to you. We really want to serve you in that way. So we thank you so much for being here, for listening, for sharing, and we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. Okay, everyone, until next time, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom.
We'll have more great topics and guests in the very near future. So join us right here in 2 weeks as the Supplement Super Sleuth
And the Herbal Storyteller take another deep dive into the fascinating world of the natural products industry.
See you later.